Hi everyone, and welcome back to Managing Octopus Deploy, where we are managing an Octopus Deploy instance and walking you through all the things that you need to know about as an Octopus Deploy manager. In previous episodes, we have talked about how to configure certain options to keep your Octopus Deploy running lean and mean, how to install Octopus Deploy in Tentacles, as well as a few other configuration options. Now for today, what we want to do is we want to talk a little bit about high availability as well as configure high availability. So what high availability is we are going to have multiple Octopus Deploy nodes connecting to the same database as well as file share. Now what this does is it allows us to split the load and scale horizontally. Now, the advantage of Octopus Deploy high availability is twofold. First thing is you can scale horizontally, as mentioned before. What that means is you have more servers with the capabilities to process tasks. The other advantage of Octopus Deploy high availability is you no longer have a single point of failure. At this time right now, I have one node. So if this node were to go down, or if I were to just come in here and say drain node, that will prevent any tasks from running whatsoever on this Octopus Deploy instance. And in fact, you will be presented with this message if you do something like this. Now, obviously, having a single point of failure is not a good thing, nor is it a good thing to have the capability or the limitation to run a set number of tasks because you can't increase your task cap due to constraints. You can, before I do get started, it does say 5 as the task cap. You can change the task cap on this screen, so I could change this to say 10. But this only goes so far. There's a finite amount of resources that you can put into a virtual machine, as well as a finite number of underlying OS threads that can run. There's only so many network connections an operating system can have. There's only so many concurrent things that .NET Framework can process. Eventually, you will run into some sort of limitations, and this is why you need to have the capability to scale horizontally. The max task cap I have seen personally in the wild is around 100, but that is for a very, very, very beefy instance, and I would highly recommend someone look at doing something like have a 3-node HA cluster with a task cap of 40 each before having a single instance with a task cap of 100. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in to configuring high availability. A couple of things we need to do beforehand. The first thing that we need to do is we need to update where Octopus Deploy is saving some blob information or binary information. And this is all done within the server folders. Now, we cannot change this here. I will walk you through how to change this. But what this is it's saying that these are all of the objects that are not stored inside of the database. If we were to come to our file share, our file explorer, we can see, these particular items. So I have task logs, I have artifacts, I have imports, which I haven't done any yet, packages, telemetry, and as well as event exports, which I also haven't done at all. Now these, if I were to come into not logs, I meant task logs. If I were to come into task logs, the reason why these are not stored in the Octopus Deploy database is because they can get fairly massive. So this is 78K. We don't want something like that stored in our database. These task logs, they can get anywhere from a few K, like we see here, all the way up to several megs, because what these are is these are the task logs that are the results of running specific things behind the scenes. And so what we can actually do is I can link this up. So we can see this is a synchronized community step template. If I were to come into my task screen and I were to show advanced filters and include system tasks, I have the synchronized community step templates, and here are all of the logs. So I have 490 lines, then this is something that we cannot store in the database. So what we need to do is we need to configure this to be shared across all of the instances. If we don't do this step, what will happen is if a node comes to the screen and it cannot access this log, what will happen is this screen will just appear as blank. No one can view, you can't view the log, you can't view any information. You will have some information over here, but you will not have the actual task log itself to view. So this is something that we absolutely need to do. What I recommend folks do is we want to enable maintenance mode, copy all of the existing files over, update the Octopus deploy configuration, and restart the instance. Now, copying files can take quite a bit of time, and so you can copy files while Octopus deploy is running. So let's make sure we copy the right folders. Let's go to Settings, Server Folders, come back to my File Explorer, and I'm going to want task logs, artifacts. I don't have imports, I have packages, as well as telemetry, and I don't have any event exports. It's okay if you do not have those folders, because a lot of times Octopus deploy will not create a folder unless it absolutely needs it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this into a shared location. I'm going to be setting up HA on the same VM. This is strictly for demonstration purposes. In the real world, you would have multiple you would have a different server per HA node. But again, this is for demonstration purposes only. So I want to copy this, and I've set up a new folder called Octopus HA, and I'm going to paste those folders in there. Now, if I were to do this in production, I would be using a tool like RoboCopy or some sort of copying tool that would run this copy behind the scenes for, because it could take hours upon hours, especially if your instance has been around for years and years for all of the files that needs to copy over. I would copy files over as kind of a pre-staging thing, and then when it came time to do the final conversion, then I would do a final copy. So let's go ahead and we are going to do a final conversion, and we are then going to set up Octopus HA. So the first thing I want to do is I want to enable maintenance mode. If I had any other users in this system, I do not want them coming in and basically causing havoc while I'm doing this type of changeover. This is something that you would probably want to do in an off hours, not in the middle of the day as people are trying to do deployments or anything like that. So I've enabled maintenance mode, and I'm going to copy the same things as before. In the real world, again, you would use some sort of automated tool like RoboCopy, but let's just copy let's just copy those folders in one more time, just to make sure I have the latest and greatest things. I'm going to go ahead and skip all of those files, anything that already exists. Okay. The next thing that I want to do is I want to change this folder from C Octopus to a shared folder. Again, in the real world, you would be changing this to a file share. So it would be something like, my folder, maybe you have a server like 10.0.2.233, Octopus HA. You might have something like that. For the purposes of this demonstration, because I'm doing everything on a local demo, what I'm going to be doing is I am going to go ahead and point everything to that folder that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to change my directory, run a command that's going to change the path, and then I'm going to restart the instance. So let's go ahead and let's kick off the script. Okay, we have updated the Octopus deploy file share. So let's go ahead and let's refresh this page. And now we see that all of my folders are now going to be stored in C Octopus HA. Again, in the real world, you would have something where it's like a SMB share, some sort of shared folder. You would not put everything on a single server like this. Again, this is just for demonstration purposes only. So I have configured this. The next thing that I need to do is come into my Octopus Manager, and I need to copy my master key. So the master key is the key that is used to encrypt and decrypt data from the Octopus Deploy database. You can only view the master key if you have administration rights on the Octopus Deploy instance, excuse me, the Octopus Deploy virtual machine, and you have the ability to basically administrate. You can run this as an administrator. So I'm going to go ahead and view the master key, and I'm going to copy this to my clipboard. So I'll be using it for a little bit later. I would highly recommend you back up this master key. Your master key will be very different than my master key. Highly recommend you back this up to a secret vault or a secret manager and limit access to who has access to this. If you were to lose this master key and your Octopus Deploy database were to be corrupted or were to crash or you were to lose it and you needed to restore backup, without this master key, you will be unable to restore the backup to full functionality. It is possible to clean up all of the encrypted data, but you will have a very long day ahead of you unless you do this. Okay, so let's go ahead. Again, I copied this to clipboard. So I have the master key, I have a shared folder location, and I have my database ready to go. So those are the three things that we're going to need. Again, I'm going to be doing this just as demonstration purposes. You would do this on a separate instance, a separate virtual machine, but I just want to have a single instance. So I'm just going to call this HA node 02. Go ahead and create it. Now, instead of clicking on Getting Started, I want to add this instance to a high availability cluster. And I'll be presented with the wizard just like I was when I initially installed Octopus Deploy. I'm going to use a local system account. I'm going to go to my local database, and I'm going to use the same credentials, SVC. And I want my database to be Octopus Deploy. Now, a new option has appeared called cluster, and you'll see what that is in just a second. So I need to provide the master key that I had from before, and I need to give this a node name. So I'm going to call this node 02. And this is what's going to appear in the table and on the user interface. I also need to give it a listen port. So the other HA node that I have already configured on this instance is 8080. So I'm going to call it 8081. I'm also going to be asked if there's going to be additional ports that I need to configure. This is for listening tentacles. You would not have to run into this because you would have a unique virtual machine per HA node. This is just something I'm running into because I have multiple instances of Octopus Deploy running on my same instance. And so now I can go ahead and click on Install. Make note that I still do have maintenance mode enabled while I'm doing this. And you will not want to disable maintenance mode until we have verified that the HA node has been added successfully and is able to communicate with Octopus Deploy. Okay, so it has configured the service and it has successfully installed the HA node. Now, the nice thing about this is that going forward in the future, we won't have to mess around with the maintenance mode. We can add HA nodes as we see fit because they are all going to connect and communicate with one another via the database. So I can go ahead and click on Finish, and I can view, if I wanted to, I could open up localhost 8081, and I will be presented with the same app as I saw before. I'm going to go ahead and close this. I'm going to come back to my nodes, and now you can see that I have node 02 running with a task cap of 5. I have VM, which is my original node, and that's running with a task cap of 10. If I were to, this was my very first time configuring HA, what I most likely will do is I will come in here and I'll change this task cap to say 1. I can keep it at 5. Let's just say 1 if I wanted to do a canary style deployment. So as tasks were getting picked up, I would have roughly 10% chance, 8.9% chance of it running on the new node or any sort of deployments or something like that. The other thing that I would do is I would drain this node, especially if I just added this. I would want to test this, and I can come in here and I can rerun any task. So let's just rerun this task. Not this one. I just realized I don't want to rerun that one. Let's run this one. And so what will happen is this is going to get picked up by the other node within about 20 seconds or so. So this is where you would be managing the HA nodes on this particular instance. So we should see it get picked up pretty quickly. Once we're done, we will not drain this. We will change this back to where we disable the drain node, node drain. What node drain means basically is that you've configured this node not to process any tasks whatsoever. This is something that you might typically do if you're unsure of a node, if you think it's problematic, if you don't want it to process anything, if you want to do anything where you want to kind of force all traffic to another node for any number of different reasons. Draining the node is a good way to do it without messing around with your task cap. And we have seen that it finished processing health check for target 2, and it was done on node 02. Okay. So let's go ahead and disable the node drain, and I want to change the task cap. Let's change this to 10. So we have the capacity to process 20 tasks at a time. Finally, I want to disable my maintenance mode. A couple of notes about high availability is that if you recall in the previous video when we did a listening tentacle, that we configured it to trust, that listening tentacle was configured to trust this thumbprint. This is the thumbprint for the Octopus deploy instance. This is what is stored in the Octopus deploy database. So if you're using all listening tentacles, then you will not have anything to worry about. You can add as many HA nodes as you'd like, because every one of those will use the same server thumbprint. The Octopus deploy tentacle will trust additional HA nodes. So all you really need to worry about is making sure that the Octopus deploy instance can see those nodes. This is why I reran this initial health check for dev target 01, because that is a deployment target that is a listening tentacle. Polling tentacles are slightly different. Depending on the version that you're running, you might have to register each node with the polling tentacle, and our documentation will walk you through on how to do all of that. In future versions or more modern versions of Octopus Deploy, you will no longer have to do that. But again, depending on the version of Octopus Deploy that you're running, that is something that you'll have to consider. All right, so that is how to configure high availability. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.